Rahim with Eddie Hearn. I don't know how you keep this up. We've got huge fight after huge fight after huge fight, and here we are again for a huge fight. The question that I have about this fight, though, is it huge on its own merit, or is everybody just hoping to see some glimpse of the senior Eubank and Nigel Benn?
Well, I think, let's be honest, if they weren't their father's sons, it would still be an epic fight. But the magnitude of the fight, and I'm talking about you can't walk down a street in this country without people being aware of it or talking about it or knowing it, of course stems from that narrative and the great rivalry of British boxing from 30 years ago. But two ferocious fighters, two incredibly entertaining fighters, the fact that they're the sons of two British boxing legends who also had a great rivalry. You know, sometimes you get those fights, don't you, with the sons where it's like, the son of, I don't know, Tommy Morrison or something like that. It's like
the daughter of Frazier and Layla Ali.
But the reality is, these are two world-class fighters. And that's something you don't see very often. That two great fighters of yesteryear who had such an intense rivalry that their world-class sons go and duke it out. It's pretty special.
The narrative writes itself. You've just written it again beautifully. But I think the reality of it is you've got a 147-pounder coming up to 57. You've got what is really a 60-pounder, maybe 68 on some nights. But those 3 pounds, I think he might be putting on a little bit as to how hard that is to cut. And Eubank has as many knockouts as Ben has fights. So the disparity between the two fighters, that's not any disrespect to Ben, he's just at a different place, weight-wise and career-wise. How is this not a mismatch?
Oh, it's definitely not a mismatch, but I would say the disadvantage is definitely with Conor Benn in this fight. You know, you've seen a lot of comments, from his own father, Chris Eubank, saying this is dangerous for Chris Eubank Jr. coming down to 157. I don't agree. I think it's tough. But it's also tough to move from 147 to 157 and then probably 167 or 170 in the ring on the night. So for me, the bigger disadvantage is with Conor Benn in this fight. But there are disadvantages to both men. We have to find a middle ground that we believe is fair for both men. And that's the jobs of both teams to do that. And I think we found it.
All right, we talk about the disadvantage for Ben. What do you make of what Eubank Sr. has said? I mean, you guys have had your rows in the past trying to promote fights together, but he's made this a bit more difficult maybe than it needs to be. Does he have a point? Is there something to be concerned about the weight differential, his son coming down, Ben coming up so much?
I mean, look, he's very stubborn, and once he comes out with an opinion, he has to run with it, and he won't go back with it, and he'll almost go deeper on it. So you'll see that a lot this week. He'll go again with this vibe, right? But let me tell you about making weight. There was probably very few fighters as vicious in terms of making weight as Chris Eubank Sr. You know that for Ben Eubank 1 and back in the day, these fighters would weigh in on the day of the fight. I won't tell you how much weight Chris Eubank Sr. lost on that day because my dad was with him the whole time. But let me tell you, that's dangerous. You know, to make weight like that on the day of a fight. Now, the regulations are in place. He'll weigh in at 1 o'clock. He'll have to weigh in again at 11 a.m. in the morning. He'll then have another 12 hours to rehydrate again. So you have to find, when you make a fight like this, some kind of middle ground. I think Eubank weighed 159.1 or 2 in his last fight. He's really got to come down 2.2 pounds from where he was at last time. He's got to make the weight first, Rahim. But you can't say it's dangerous for him to make the weight, and on the other hand, he's out eating burgers. Do you know what I mean? Right. Trolling or not. So I expect it to be tough for Chris Eubank Jr., but I expect it to be very tough for Conor Benn.
And to your point, Eubank eating burgers and cake, and that's what I mean. I'm not sure it's really as hard as he's putting on to lose those extra 3 pounds the day before. Of course, I'm not the fighter. Maybe it is. But my point being, with Ben having to come up 10 pounds, which is difficult. I see it not so much like Eubank, Ben 3, but more like Canelo Bivol. Not that it'll end the same way, but it's more like Ben is really reaching out to try to do something great.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in this fight. If you understand the rivalry, it's very difficult for both men not to accept this fight. Do you know what I mean? Once they reach a stage, I mean, look, when Conor turned pro, Eubank was already up fighting around world championships. And Conor was a million miles away. All of a sudden, he becomes a world-class fighter. And it's like, you know, we might be able to do this, you know. And then you have one conversation in the office where they go, let's do it. And it's on. And you can't, at that stage, it's like, I say to Conor, I want to fight Eubank. He's like, fucking yeah, I want to fight Eubank. You joking? And Eubank says, do you want to fight Conor Benn? What? Eubank Benn? Yeah. Like, that's how, you know. And honestly, Eubank believes this is a stroll in the park.
And he said as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, on a warm summer's day, I believe.
Yeah,
Now, far be it from me to switch roles out of my media stance, because you'll never hear a media guy say, well, maybe we should wait on the fight. Maybe it's too soon. But in this case, you know, maybe let it cook a year or so. Maybe Ben gets a little bit naturally heavier. The fight, Eubank's a little bit closer to his mid-30s, and it's a bit even. Was that even considered, or, you know?
This is the time, because Eubank's not going to be around forever. You know, I don't see the same hungry fighter from Eubank that I once saw. He's 32, 33, you know, and ultimately Conor Benn's going to go on and fight for championships at 147, in my opinion. This fight, you know, every now and again it presents itself. This was the one time, and it's mad, isn't it, where you get a fight. You imagine if this fight was hyped, was talked about, everyone got so excited, and then it didn't happen. And everyone went, fucking hate boxing. Eddie Hearn, why don't they ever make these fights? Then you make the fight, and everyone goes, wouldn't it be better if we just let this one marinate a little bit? I mean, how crazy are we as fight fans? We're never happy, are we?
I think that's the first time I've ever said that, so fair play to you. That said, Eubank's threatened to retire if he loses this fight.
Yeah, I think he should. Because he wants to be in the game to challenge for world titles, right? If he doesn't win this fight, he can't fight for world titles at middleweight. And I think he'll be done. So I don't think he's putting a lot of pressure on himself by saying that. I think he's actually being real. But he's also very confident about winning this fight.
Do you think, in the reverse, that Ben really catapults himself into the upper echelon of 147-pounders if he's able to beat a natural middleweight?
I think he's already done that, but I think his profile and his credibility and, you know, his star power goes through the roof with this victory.
Well, as I've said, waiting on a fight is something the media never asked for, but you as a promoter knows how easy it is for a super fight to slip through your fingers. There's no way we can discuss anything without talking about what stirred the whole boxing media today. This Joshua Fury fight is off. But I must have to note, the last time we talked, it was like we had a discussion about them yanking your chain from the very beginning. Like maybe this fight was never actually on. Do you think that that's what we're actually looking at? Just...
No, take it. I don't want it.
I want it. I'll take it.
I'll lose it. I've been in that position before.
Wait, Tony Bell, you just giving away Rolexes?
No.
Saturday, I'll lose it.
Wait, Conor, any words for Eddie? We've just obviously been discussing the fight. Talk to me about the difference between yourself and Eubank. And I said maybe it's better to wait like a year, 2 years, let these things grow together. You be more naturally heavy.
You don't pass up on opportunities like this. You know, we all saw the magnitude of this fight. And, you know, me and my team are confident in what I do day in, day out in the gym with who I'm sparring with, what my strengths are, what I walk around at. And, you know, as a team, we all sat down and thought, this is the right time to make the fight. You don't know what can happen in a year, 2 years. Why pass up on this opportunity when it's here now? The other fights didn't grow legs quick enough. So, you know, this fight grew legs and you know, it ran.
And lastly on that, you know, Eubank's threatened to retire if you beat him. Eddie says that's probably a good idea. He's being smarter. If he can't beat you, he should retire. You agree with that?
Completely. And I'm holding to it. I should get him to sign the contract saying I will retire after Conor beats my ass. I should get him to sign that contract.
Shall we have that drafted up for the press conference?
Yeah. I'm going to get the contract drawn up. When I beat your ass, you retire. Yeah?
Cheers.
They work really well together, the two of them.
They do. You know,
it's not like I mean, look, before the fight was made, if they see each other, they'd like shake each other. But like, they just work well. You got him, who's like all fire, right? And then you got Eubank, who's just, sort of.
You know, it's funny you say that because I think at the end of the day, when all this dust settles, they're going to be something like Chisora and Hay. Like,
But I mean, look, I can't, like, genuinely, the rivalry between the fathers, like Nigel Benn hated Eubank. Like, and Eubank, I would say hated Nigel Benn because he wasn't really like that. See, mate? He wasn't really like that. But Nigel Benn hated Chris Eubank. And that breeds through the household. Do you know what I mean? When you grow up, it's a little bit like, even like when you talk about Frank Warren and Bob Arum, like, they never got on with my dad. I don't forget that. Do you know what I mean? It don't mean I won't work with them. But as a kid, when you're sitting in a study and you're listening to the arguments on the phone and you know who's on the other end of the phone, subconsciously, that rivalry infiltrates you. And that's really the same with Conor. So Conor, growing up, all he'd hear about was Eubank. Fucking Eubank. I can't stand, so, like, they don't, it's just, it works. It works really well.
I think to your point, this fight probably is more about the fathers than the sons, and that if Ben can put that feather in his father's cap of one Ben having beaten a Eubank outright, no matter what Nigel says, it'll probably be the cherry on top of his sundae for his whole career. I think if Fury, no matter what he says about legacy, can at some point become the undisputed, holding all the belts, heavyweight champion, and then actually retire, there's no way that that's not what he ultimately wants for his career. For Joshua, what is it that burns so brightly in him that will allow him to do what the hard work will be of reclaiming those titles and even possibly becoming undisputed one day, which clearly was his stated goal?
Heart, desire, love for the game, passion, will to win, all those things. In life, Rahim, you got some people that are winners and you got some people that are willing to let it pass. AJ, with his money now and his achievements, could quite easily say, because I'll be honest with you, like, you have to put up with a lot of shit, Like, you walk down the street, as he does, AJ, wait, other side, AJ, you dosser. Next bloke, AJ, we love you. Next bloke, AJ, you pussy. Like, people think that kind of success is a blessing. It's really not. There's a lot to be said about an easy life. And with success, easy lives don't exist. So you need to have the will to win. You need to want to have the passion to succeed. And he has that. And he wants to become world champion again. He wants to fight the best. He wants to beat the best. And that's his mindset.
And you have to be careful on how you plot your course. And Joshua, obviously the same. Regardless of whose fault it is that this fight didn't happen, are you a bit relieved that this fight isn't happening right now, Fury Joshua?
No, because it's what AJ wanted. Like, do I think he can beat Tyson Fury now? Yes. Do I think he would benefit from a couple of fights first? Yes. There's no point lying about it. It's like, that's common sense. But when he says to me, I want that fight, I'm in. Okay? So we do what we can to get it right. We're not, when Fury comes out and says, you got to take this fight, you got nothing, you're desperate. Not really. We've got the whole world ahead of us. AJ is one of the biggest names in the sport, right? So we can do everything at our pace. He's willing to be the B-side. He's willing to make the concessions to make the fight. But we couldn't do it. And if we can't do it, we can't do it. And we move forward with our original plan. No stress. But
what's the original plan? The
original plan is to come back, have 2 quick fights, and be active, work with your new team, and gear yourself up to challenge for the world heavyweight title again.
Are there nails in the coffin on this Joshua Fury?
It's still there, but we've had 2 deadlines now. One which was double confirmed, it was the final deadline, which was completely impossible, those deadlines. They passed, and since then, there's not really a lot has happened. Derek Chisora has received a contract for that fight with Tyson Fury, and as far as we're concerned, he's fighting Char or he's fighting Chisora.
Derek's received a contract from Fury.
Yep.
And lastly on this point, is there any way you get on the phone directly or Joshua gets on the phone? And, like, what's the sticking point then if they actually ever wanted to make the fight in the first place?
Point is we all agreed that we wouldn't say anything on social media, and then Tyson Fury comes out and says, you got till the end of today, you big dosser. You don't deserve this fight. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. And then eventually someone's going to go, all right, let him fight someone else.
I'll tell you, everybody I ask says, Joshua Fury, yeah, great, maybe. But you know what I'd really like to see? Still, after all this time, after all these negotiations, Wilder, Joshua.
Absolutely. And I believe you'll see that in 2023.
There you go. I always love
Hellenius first.
Yes. All right, I'll take that promise, but I'll hold you to it. Radio Rahim with Eddie Hearn.